Welcome, students. Welcome to the first lecture in this How to Write an Argumentative Essay course. Lecture number 1, Introductions. Let's get to know each other. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan. I'm from Brampton, Ontario, Canada. I am an English language and communications teacher of 6 years. I'm a teacher trainer as well, so I actually teach a TEFL, so that's Teaching English as a Foreign Language certificate at a university here in Canada. I also have online courses where I prepare teachers to teach English or to teach languages online. All right. So I don't just teach languages, I also teach teachers how to teach languages. I'm a curriculum designer. I have designed, developed, and sold curricula online. So that means I have created lesson plans, packages of lesson plans, like 20, 30, 40 of them. I've had people like business owners contact me because they want custom made curriculum. So I've worked on that too. Syllabi or syllabuses. I like to think of myself as a pedagogical innovator. So that just means I'm trying to push the envelope. I'm trying to be the teacher who I wanted to have when I was in your shoes. Overall, in the grand scheme of things, in the big picture, I want to be a teacher who stays up to date with the teaching trends, who tries to set some of the teaching trends, and who tries to experiment within reason with different new approaches, techniques, methods. I'm a college professor, university instructor of 3 years. I'm a former student in a similar course. So I took a course just like this one when I was in college. In fact, I probably took a couple courses just like this one. I know it's not easy. The last thing I want you to think is that Ryan looks down on me condescendingly as if, how do you not know how to write an essay? Believe me, there are many different kind of techniques and approaches different educators use in different parts of the world. Some of these things are, you know, they're based on the institution, some of them are based on the culture, some of them are based on the nation. Like, you could be coming from anywhere in the world, anywhere in Canada, and there's no reason why anything in this course should be obvious or just a given or common sense. So please never assume that, and I will never assume that something should just be obvious to you. Okay? This is a beginner friendly course. It's a judgment free zone. All right? All I want to do is make sure that you have some of the tools that you will probably need, and I speak from experience as a post-secondary institution educator, that you will probably need at a post-secondary institution. Okay? I'm passionate about all things education. So I'm just passionate about how people learn. Contact me via Udemy or at onlineenglishteacherryan@gmail.com. Please be patient. I will try to get back to you as quickly as I can. I like to keep everything relevant. So that's number one. Education should be applicable to your academic and or professional success. So that means remember in class in middle school, you may have asked your teacher, when am I ever going to use trigonometry in the real world, right? And I'm not bashing trigonometry right now. I'm just saying that is kind of an example of, a bigger question of students asking, like, when am I going to use this? Where am I going to use this, right? And I want this course to, at the very least, to prepare you to do something which could help boost your GPA. Because if you boost your average in your post-secondary program, that may allow you to access a postgraduate program, like a master's degree if you want one, or a certificate program, or it may even permit you to get a better job if your employer actually cares about your GPA. And finally, it could just give you something to be proud of, right? So a lot of you, I understand you pretty much will need to write an essay for that reason. It's not some intrinsic kind of motivation or but I do want to make sure that you could see some of the connections that do exist between this course and your academic or professional experience. I try to make everything learner-centered. So that means as we go through this course, I will be giving you a few options. Those could be with assignments, those could be with readings. I like for my students to be at the center of the course. So instead of me like talking at you, it's more so we are working together. I'd like for this to be as engaging as possible. From the PowerPoint slideshow templates that I have, I try to have a lot of color. I try to use my voice to be as engaging as possible. But again, some students jive with that, some students don't. Um, I don't take it personally. It's all about your learning style, my teaching style, right? And that's one of the drawbacks of a course like this is that unless if you really reach out to me and let me know, I can't really get much feedback from you, right? So make sure if there's any suggestions you do have or anything I could help make clearer, you send me an email and let me know. Finally, practical. Education in this course, it is thorough. We're going to be going through, what an essay is, how you write one, how you do an introduction, why you do an introduction, blah, blah, blah. But I would also like to do it in the most efficient way possible. That's all to say, like, you could be spending 14 or 15 weeks on a course like this in a college where you have to pay thousands of dollars and you have to buy a hefty textbook, right? We're not going to do that. There's no textbook here. This part of the course is free, WRIT 1001, right? So, I mean, you have nothing to lose. So let's get started. Who are you? Why are you here? In the first assignment in this course, I'd love for you to let me know who you are, why you've enrolled in WRIT 1001. What are your goals? What are your expectations for this course? Is there anything else you'd like for me to know or to assist you with? Welcome to lesson number 2, Introduction to WRIT 1001. So in this short lecture, we're just going to talk about what WRIT 1001 is and the key objectives for WRIT 1001 and WRIT 1002. Remember, WRIT 1001, that is this course you're in right now. WRIT 1002 is kind of the sequel to this course, all right? And when I use the term WRIT 1000, I'm talking about just both the courses together, okay? So the key objectives in WRIT 1000, first of all, whichever course you're in college or university, there should be objectives or outcomes, okay? Now, as a student, we usually don't really care what those outcomes are, but believe you me, if it means anything, your teacher has put a lot of thought into what those outcomes are, all right? So we're just going to talk about these objectives quickly today. My goal is for you to be able to write accurately. So that means to work on your grammar, your mechanics. Just quickly, mechanics have nothing to do with like cars or auto, anything. Mechanics with writing has to do with like your spacing, your spelling, your punctuation, your capitalization, for example. So overall accuracy. And while we talk about accuracy, I'd like to also talk about why we have these rules in the first place. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. I'm not trying to convince you that all of these rigid rules we have in academic writing are great, or standard English in general are great. But I'd like for you to at least like understand kind of some of the arguments for these rules, why we have commas and semicolons, for example. I'd like for you to be able to write cohesively. So that means to transition between sentences, between words, between paragraphs, between ideas, cohesively. And with cohesion, I'm just talking about the flow of your writing, how well you are connecting these ideas together. How well you're kind of preparing the audience and your reader for new ideas. Are you preparing them and kind of like guiding them into the new idea, or are you just abruptly throwing it in their face, right? And I'll kind of give you that, like the perspective of the general academic audience while I'm giving you feedback. Write coherently. So that's what we're going to work on specifically in WRIT 1001, the first part of this course. So that means your argumentation. supporting points, examples, analyses, how clear your points are. So the main assignment you're going to be completing in this course right here, WRIT 1001, is going to be an argumentative essay outline. And that's basically going to be a rubric or a roadmap of your main points, your main thesis points, and basically how you plan to um, support your points throughout your paper. All right, your argumentation. And that will really kind of feed into how logical and how coherent your argument is. All right. If none of that makes sense yet, that it shouldn't, because you should be beginners. So we're all good. All right. Um, but that's going to be the main focus of this course right here, because we're focusing on, more so the bones of your essay rather than like the meat in the and all that extra stuff. So in WRIT 1002, the main things we'll focus on are writing accurately, writing cohesively. We will focus on writing coherently, and we'll focus on writing consistently. Consistency pertains to the structure that you have in your body paragraphs, the balance that you have. So is one body paragraph way longer than the other? Are some sentences way longer than other ones, right? Um, yeah, and that's where length comes into play too. Consistency also has to do with like the kind of words you're using. So are you using like a mix of formal words and very informal words, and it kind of puts the reader off? Um, or are you consistently like what we're doing in this course? I would like for you to be able to kind of find your voice as a writer. And as you find your voice, you're going to find which words you like using more, which kind of structures which style you like more, which style is yours, right? Um, but to make sure that the style seems consistent, it comes off cohesively, it comes off accurately, and it doesn't come off as very kind of fragmented and choppy. All right. So this all kind of ties into your overall fluency as writers. And welcome to lesson number 3. So WRIT 1001, what it is and what it isn't. So just a few main differences between these two courses. WRIT 1001 is, first of all, for you to get to know me, your instructor, to get to know the course that you're taking, to get to know your strengths and areas for improvement. Understand objectives, expectations, learn about research questions, thesis statements, essay structure, and supporting details. Create an argumentative essay outline. In other words, just get started, right? You have nothing to lose with this course. You could go at your own kind of pace. It's completely open, right? For WRIT 1002, this is where we're really going to focus on making your good work great, or your great work excellent, or your excellent work like impossible not to give 100%. So I would like to help you automatize your planning, writing, and revising processes. Automatize, that just means to make it quicker, more efficient, teach you the hacks, teach you the shortcuts, right? Make your life easier, because I see it every semester. I have taught thousands of college and university students. I see the students who work hard but not smart, right? So let's make sure that we could find a balance between the two. Practice providing support for thesis statements and for supporting details. Improve the cohesion, consistency, and coherence of your writing. Learn how to turn that 60 into an 80. Again, a lot of you are taking these courses, because you want to like go into the college or university in September or January, whenever you start. You want to go into there like feeling confident as possible. And at the very least, like taking a course like this will kind of open your eyes to what it is like to take a college or university course if you haven't taken one before, or if you haven't taken one for a long time, right? I'm teaching you the way and similar material to what I teach to my actual college students, right? Every every teacher is different, every institution is different, every country is different, of course, but there are certain things that overlap, right? So you will be writing a full 500-word argumentative essay. You will get better, okay? And this is a way for you to really boost that GPA. So those are kind of the differences between WRIT 1001 and WRIT 1002. Welcome to lesson number 4, conducting self-assessments. This is the final lesson in this first section of the course. Congratulations. We're almost ready to actually dive into creating an essay outline. So first of all, why do we conduct assessments in the first place? How do we conduct assessments? So when I give my students feedback, number one is to recognize their strengths, okay? All of you are bringing unique experiences and knowledge to the classroom, right? So let's celebrate that. All of you have strengths. And if nothing else, your strength is your ability to show up. Your strength is your ability to still be here, all right? So recognize your strengths. After that, indicate gaps. Instead of looking at it as a weakness, let's look at it as a gap. And the reason why is because I don't believe there's a good or a bad English. There's just different Englishes for different situations, right? We have informal English slang that people might use in the city where I'm from, Brampton, when they're hanging out with friends. Or there is formal, like academic English that people may use in a communications course at Sheridan College in the Greater Toronto area as well, right? So in the same kind of area, you could be using way different types of English, right? There's no right or wrong English. It's just different types of English. And for you, you might be used to using a certain type of English, which deviates from the English that you will be expected to use at a college or university, right? And since you're watching this and listening in English, I'm guessing you will be using a little bit of English along the way too, right? So it's just about making sure that you could use your skills and just kind of tweak them, adjust them a little bit for the kinds of requirements you'll have as a student. I never just give criticism. I always give suggestions. I always follow that up with suggestions. In the same way that we're trying to automatize your learning, I've automatized my teaching. And that's to say that every student is different, but a lot of students have similar kind of stresses and worries and struggles and strengths when they come to these sorts of classes. So I've seen it before, right? And the suggestions that I will give, most of them have worked with students, unless if I'm completely giving you something that's like, that I've never dealt with before, I will make that clear. I will say, you might want to do blah, 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 right? But for the most part, any suggestions, any recommendations I give you, I have given other students and they have worked, right? But of course, it takes two to tango. You can't just take the feedback and not apply it appropriately. So we'll talk about applying feedback a little bit after. Finally, build trust. Whether if you're like assessing yourself, assessing a peer in a classroom, assessing your teacher, whether if I'm assessing myself, assessing another teacher, assessing you as a student, whoever we're assessing, we could build a little bit of trust, especially if we do our due diligence with recognizing gaps. Recognizing strengths, indicating gaps, and giving suggestions, right? The final note I'll leave this on is just to say that this course is not about me assessing you. This course is about your written work being assessed in accordance or in comparison to the rubric for the different assignments and the instructions for the different assignments. So it's almost more important for you to really make sure that you understand what the rubric and instructions necessitate rather than to make sure you know what I expect. All right. Types of assessment. So the student could assess the teacher or the teacher could assess the student. Peer assessment, the student assesses another student. or self-assessment. The student assesses themselves, and that's what you're going to be doing to kick things off in this course. Self-assessment, this allows you to consider the feedback you have received from previous teachers. Think about challenges you've had with writing, reading, and brainstorming. Reflect on the academic skills you have or don't have. Do you enjoy writing? Why? What about debating? Think about your ability to take and apply feedback. Consider your goals for this course. Think about your goals for your college diploma or university degree in general. Reflect on your study skills in general. How do you spend your time outside the classroom? What's your definition of academic success? What's your idea of a model student? Why have you chosen to take this course? So you don't have to answer all of these questions or any of them, but if you choose to do this assignment, then this is a great opportunity for you to really reflect and to dig deep, and that is how you will start improving. All right, that's the power of reflection, and believe me, it does work. There will be a difference between the students who have done the first assignment in this course, the self-introduction, and this assignment versus the students who bypass them. Okay, so I strongly suggest you do it, but the choice is yours. Welcome, everybody, to lecture number 5, and this will kick off the second section of this course. We're at 1001. So we're going to talk a little bit about why we write essays in the first place. Why do we write essays? Why is this something that is so common in academia? And this could also help you to understand the reasons why we don't write essays sometimes. Like, why are there other assignments that we do? Which gaps do essays actually have? Because they are not perfect measurements of success, and they're also not perfect kind of ways to exercise your ability with academic writing. So let's start off with the reasons why we write essays. Number one, they could help us to organize ideas. Simply put, if you're writing an essay, typically you're going to have some sort of structure that you're following in order to successfully convey a message to the reader. They could help us to reflect on the language we use. So by writing an essay, by planning, writing, revising, you could kind of think to yourself, okay, what is my style? What is my voice as a writer? Why am I using these words but not those words? There could be certain words that you just really don't like using, or certain types of structures that you find are very clunky, that are very kind of choppy, and they don't give a good flow. They don't represent you very well. So this could allow you to reflect on the language we use, and also maybe on the different rules and conventions and norms that are standard in academia, which you don't like. And that's completely valid as well. Believe me, there are a lot of things I don't like in the kind of academic tone that we use in our essay writing. But as I said, they could help you find a voice. Writing essays could help you find your voice. Some people, they are more kind of used to speaking, and they are more confident with speaking than they are with writing, and it feels awkward to start writing. So that's one thing this could help you with, just to start writing things down and to try to find a way to, funnel and channel all of your deep, valuable, unique experiences and knowledge into the pen and the pad. They could help us to improve communication. Again, your objective while writing an essay is to clearly convey a message to your reader. And your reader should be the generic kind of college student or teacher. All right. This is a beginner-friendly course. You're going to be writing a pretty basic essay for a beginner level readership. That means it should be geared towards a readership and audience that might not be experts in the topic of your essay. You're going to guide your reader. It's like you're a tour guide, or you're on a gondola in Venice, and you are taking them through, walking them through different aspects of your argument. And you're going to go piece by piece, thesis point by thesis point, supporting detail by supporting detail. You're going to try to make it impossible for your reader to not understand what you are saying, what you are talking about. You're going to try to make it as clear as day what your argument is. That doesn't mean you're trying to persuade your reader, and it doesn't mean that your reader won't disagree with you. But it means that you're going to at least make your argument crystal clear, or as clear as possible, right? So writing essays could give us more time to think. Just like writing in general, if you're writing in a diary or a journal, I mean, this could give you some more time to just to think about your ideas, consider counter arguments. They could help us to explain our ideas. And as I said, they could help us to consider counter arguments. And that's one of the, reasons we're in academia in the first place. It's to get different human beings together into one spot where they could exchange knowledge, engage in dialogue, question their own beliefs, and learn from others. And those are some of the kind of key tenets of academia right there. So just to finish things off, part of learning what you like is also learning what you don't like, right? So if you're writing an essay on a topic and you realize, wow, this is not very pleasant, at least you're learning about, you could cross something off the list. That's something that you're not interested in, right? It could allow you to go deep into something. Let's imagine that you think that you're interested in engineering, but then you write an essay about it and you do some research and you start thinking more critically and you go really deep into it. You realize to yourself, wow, maybe this isn't something that I would like to get into, right? So this could give you an idea of, some things you don't enjoy doing. And even if that's just writing an argumentative essay, so that's something you don't enjoy doing, at least we're a little bit closer to finding out what you do enjoy doing. Welcome, everybody, to lecture number 5. And this will kick off the second section of this course, WRIT 1001. So we're going to talk a little bit about why we write essays in the first place. Why do we write essays? Why is this something that is so common in academia? And this could also help you to understand the reasons why we don't write essays sometimes. Like, why are there other assignments that we do? Which gaps do essays actually have? Because they are not perfect measurements of success, and they're also not perfect kind of ways to exercise your ability with academic writing. So let's start off with the reasons why we write essays. Number one, they could help us to organize ideas. Simply put, if you're writing an essay, typically you're going to have some sort of structure that you're following in order to successfully convey a message to the reader. They could help us to reflect on the language we use. So by writing an essay, by planning, writing, revising, you could kind of think to yourself, okay, what is my style? What is my voice as a writer? Why am I using these words, but not those words? There could be certain words that you just really don't like using, or certain types of, structures that you find are very clunky, that are very kind of, choppy, and they don't give a good flow. They don't represent you very well. So this could allow you to reflect on the language we use, and also maybe on the different rules and conventions and norms that are standard in academia, which you don't like. And that's completely valid as well. Believe me, there are a lot of things I don't like in the kind of academic tone that we use in our essay writing. But as I said, they could help you find a voice. Writing essays could help you find your voice. Some people, they are more kind of used to speaking, and they are more confident with speaking than they are with writing, and it feels awkward to start writing. So that's one thing this could help you with, just to start writing things down and to try to find a way to, funnel and channel all of your deep, valuable, unique experiences and knowledge into the pen and the pad. They could help us to improve communication. Again, your objective while writing an essay is to clearly convey a message to your reader. And your reader should be the generic kind of college student or teacher. All right. This is a beginner friendly course. You're going to be writing a pretty basic essay for a beginner level readership. That means it should be geared towards a readership and audience that might not be experts in the topic of your essay. You're going to guide your reader. It's like you're a tour guide or you're on a gondola in Venice and you are taking them through, walking them through different aspects of your argument. And you're going to go piece by piece, thesis point by thesis point, supporting detail by supporting detail. You're going to try to make it impossible for your reader to not understand what you are saying, what you are talking about. You're going to try to make it as clear as day what your argument is. That doesn't mean you're trying to persuade your reader, and it doesn't mean that your reader won't disagree with you. But it means that you're going to at least make your argument crystal clear, or as clear as possible, right? So writing essays could give us more time to think. Just like writing in general, if you're writing in a diary or a journal, I mean, this could give you some more time to just to think about your ideas, consider counter arguments. They could help us to explain our ideas. And as I said, they could help us to consider counter arguments. And that's one of the, reasons we're in academia in the first place. It's to get different human beings together into one spot where they could exchange knowledge, engage in dialogue, question their own beliefs, and learn from others. And those are some of the kind of key tenets of academia right there. So just to finish things off, part of learning what you like is also learning what you don't like, right? So if you're writing an essay on a topic and you realize, wow, this is not very pleasant, at least you're learning about, you could cross something off the list. That's something that you're not interested in, right? It could allow you to go deep into something. Let's imagine that you think that you're interested in engineering, but then you write an essay about it and you do some research and you start thinking more critically and you go really deep into it. You realize to yourself, wow, maybe this isn't something that I would like to get into, right? So this could give you an idea of, some things you don't enjoy doing. And even if that's just writing an argumentative essay, so that's something you don't enjoy doing, at least we're a little bit closer to finding out what you do enjoy doing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to lecture number 6. In this lecture, we're going to briefly discuss a few common types of essays in the post-secondary education environment, particularly in countries such as Canada. Types of essays you may need to write. Number 1, argumentative. This aims to defend an opinion, all right? So this is one of the most common types of essays, but this is not the only type of essay. Honestly, most of these essays, they have entire courses dedicated to just writing that kind of essay. We're focusing on argumentative. That's only one kind of essay you may need to write. Narrative essay, that aims to tell a story. Informative essay, you're trying to educate your reader about something. Persuasive essay, this aims to convince the reader. Reflective essay aims to explore thoughts and feelings of the reader, of the writer. And a research paper. This is another very common type of, academic text that you might have to work with. For that reason, in this course, the formula we're using for our argumentative essays will actually be very heavily influenced by the needs, the requirements, the philosophy, the objectives of a research paper. Now, we're not going to be doing research or anything like that, like formal empirical research. We're not going to be diving into citations and quotations and references. I have other courses based on that. That could come down the road. But some of the kind of the approach that we're taking towards this argumentative essay will be keeping in mind that you in your college or university experience may need to also write a research paper one day. If you don't understand yet what I'm talking about, you'll understand more when I begin talking about the argumentative essay you will be writing in WRIT 1002. Okay? So for now, just recognize these are 6 kind of common essay or text types you might have to write. And I do have a few useful resources that you could consult if you want to learn more about these other types of essays. And of course, I do have other resources on this as well. Welcome to lecture number 7. So now that we have looked at different types of essays and spoken about why we write essays in the first place, let's talk about why we conduct research in the first place. Because one of the things that will guide you in your process of planning an argumentative essay and responding to a research question will be actually thinking about a research question. We will do this together, and the research we do in this course, it won't go that deep. In fact, for most of you, all you'll have to do is spend some time thinking and jotting down ideas. You won't even have to do a Google search for different kind of research, to generate ideas for your thesis points. And that's because this is a very beginner-friendly course. But the goal is for you to start to cultivate these skills that will one day be applied to maybe writing more kind of high-level academic papers, right? This is all just the starting point, right? But it's good for us to start thinking about why we conduct research. When you're conducting research, we are identifying a gap. In certain courses, you may be permitted to simply just repeat facts that have already been established and to answer questions that have already been answered many times. So in other words, you could be writing essays on the most common of common questions that have been responded to so many times just to start to understand what an essay is and how to write an essay. This is not the case in WRIT 1001. Your research must add value to your life, to you, right? To your experience, to your knowledge, and to the readership of your discipline as a whole, okay? This sounds like a really big task, but honestly, it's just making it more relevant to you. So, instead of researching something about online education, maybe you could research online education on Udemy, right? Or on Zoom or on Desire to Learn or whichever platform you are using, right? And that way you're going a little bit deeper. And you're finding hopefully a gap, hopefully an area of research that hasn't been thoroughly investigated yet. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're learning how to write an argumentative essay, but you're also not choosing just a dull kind of everyday question that everyone knows the answer to. You could spend your time in this course planning and writing and revising an essay, which adds value to you and maybe adds value to somebody who will read your essay. The value of your work is based on how well you push the field of research forward. Avoid redundancy, avoid boring your reader because believe me, if you write something that bores your reader, it will probably bore you as well in the writing process. Find something that's really going to challenge you, but that will also be kind of fulfilling too. This could be done in a number of ways. So identifying a gap. Identify a question in your academic and or professional discipline which has only partially been answered. Apply and respond to a follow-up question. So that could be maybe there has been a yes or no question responded to a lot. Like, for example, do video games negatively affect the sleep of students or something like that, right? So maybe it's a lot of people have looked at it and they've said, yes, it does, or no, it doesn't. Okay, why? How? Who does this affect, right? add a follow-up question. And we'll work on this later in this course when we start to brainstorm research questions. Number 2, identify a question in your academic and or professional discipline which has only been responded to from a specific perspective. Apply a brand new approach or perspective to that question. So if there's a research question that has looked at like gender, right? How are advertisement strategies which target like females different than males or something like that? Well, maybe you could look at it by generation instead. How do these advertisement strategies affect millennials versus Gen Zers, right? Identify a question in your academic and or professional discipline which has already been answered and apply these results or findings to another research question. We'll talk about that after. Identify a question in your academic and or professional discipline which has already been answered and critically question those findings. Identify a question in your academic and or professional discipline which has been answered, but the research is out of date. So sometimes we have, a lot of the time, we have great research, but it's from 20, 30, 40 years ago, which, I mean, if you're in my area of research where I'm very interested in tech education, I mean, the difference from 20 years ago to today, it's completely different. The world has changed a lot, right? So depending on your field, just updating the research could be an important thing. All right, let's move on. So long story short, so what? Provide value, write critically, develop your academic voice. Like, why are you doing this, you know? By the way, you're absolutely welcome to just choose one of those freebie questions, and I will provide a list of what I call freebie questions, like the most common college or university essay questions. You could do that. I'm not looking down on that. I don't want to come off as condescending or anything like that, but I would like to push you. I would like to challenge you to try to take one of those questions, twist it a little bit, and dig deeper and try to find something that a little bit more specific, which will really benefit you from like thinking about this and researching this. Let's wrap up section number 2 of this course with lecture number 8, where we will talk about how we conduct research. It's about the process, not just the product. So let's be real here. You know, scoring an 80 or a 90 or a 95 is what a lot of you want. You're really looking at like getting that GPA score up, right? But for a lot of you, you also probably want to improve. You want to develop skills, right? And for me as an educator, I think that the process is just as important, if not more important than the product itself. So in other words, your experience of like learning things about yourself, meaning like, do I take notes well or do I struggle to take notes? Do I enjoy studying with background music or not, right? What kind of tools do I like to use to study more effectively, to plan essays more effectively? Does it help for me to have some tea or some coffee or some water or some snacks? How often do I have to take breaks, right? These are all different little study strategies you don't think about a lot, but they're valid. Like they could make your experience more enjoyable or less enjoyable, right? And if this is your first time writing an essay and planning an essay, you're off to a great start. This is the first step in your journey of learning more about being a more efficient student and automatizing the process of planning, writing, and revising. So let's start off with planning. This step is focused on reading and understanding instructions. Here you will select your topic. We all like that. The stronger you start anything in college or university, usually the easier it will be. Start your project with a clear plan, all right? And that's what we're really focusing on in WRIT 1001. Number 2, writing. For many, this is the most tedious step in the process. And believe me, I hear you. It is tedious. It could be annoying. It could be aggravating. You will follow a specific formula though. For some of you, that will be like, yay, I love it. Ryan is telling me exactly what he expects of me. This is great. I love having a template. I love having an exemplar. This is great. I know what Ryan's expecting. But for others, you will not really like that kind of rigidity. You won't really like work inside this like rigid box. So I'm sorry to those of you who feel that way, and I totally get it. It's just, I know it seems like we have the training wheels on right now, but this is a beginner level course. So maybe if you try to follow this formula the first time, maybe in the future you will feel more confident and you're like, okay, I could go off script a little bit more. I could kind of like play around with my academic skills and structuring and tone and voice a little bit more. A good portion of your grade is not just about how good your work is. It's about how well you satisfy the instructions and rubrics. I know it sounds like very like blindly following instructions and stuff. And but again, this is all about just building a foundation. So one day you could spread your wings and you could kind of like take control of your writing. Okay. And I will try my best to give you options and opportunities along the way throughout the process where you could like experiment with your voice. Finally, you will work on developing and linking your ideas in the writing process. This process will take the longest amount of time. Finally, revising. We will work on this much more in WRIT 1002. This step is often skipped. 10 to 20 minutes of revising, depending on how many errors you have, could add 10 to 20% to your mark. You will take the perspective of the reader when you're revising. So you're going to like kind of go into the reader's seat and think to yourself, okay, how does this look from the reader's perspective? Am I like walking them through my points clearly? Because remember, the argumentative essay, you're not necessarily trying to persuade the reader, but you're trying to defend your point. So your reader should be able to understand clearly each and every like thesis point and each and every supporting detail. Finally, the power of feedback. In this course, we're working together. I mentioned earlier that it's not so much that I'm assessing you, it's that your work is being assessed in accordance to the expectations of the rubric and the instructions of the assignment. To be a successful student and professional, you'll likely need to take and apply feedback. So this is a great opportunity to do that. The WRIT 1001 essay, it has the structure of the argumentative essay, but again, remember a couple lectures ago, I spoke about identifying a gap in the research. If you want to challenge yourself, if you really want to dive in, if you really want to get the most out of this process, I suggest finding a gap in your discipline and really like zeroing in on that. Here we go. Welcome to the second half of WRIT 1001. Let's get started with a few topics. Education is one common topic that you could pursue in a college or university essay. The economy is another common topic. The environment is a common topic. Health is a common topic. Society is a common topic. Now, what this course is geared towards is to try to make this more relevant to you, more learner-centered, more practical, more meaningful, right? So ideally, you will think right now, and every student is different, so you need to do the thinking. You need to ask yourself, which job do I want in the future? Or which program, which like subject am I going to focus on in my college studies? Which major am I going to take? Right? If you don't know the answers to any of those, that is fine. Absolutely fine. What you should do in that case is ask yourself, what am I interested in? What are some possible like career paths that I may go down, right? And as I mentioned earlier in this course, if anything, you will start to research that kind of domain or discipline and you will realize, hey, I'm not really interested in this. And that may push you into another direction, which is at least closer to what you want to kind of focus on in the future. So anyway, what we should do now is focus on a topic. But that's not it, okay? Another thing that I spoke about earlier on in this course is the importance of finding a gap, finding something meaningful. And you are absolutely welcome to pursue one of the cliche freebie, as I call them, topics. Those are like really common essay topics. And we're actually going to use ChatGPT to help us find a few of these topics, okay? So you're welcome to pursue one of those topics if you want to. But I would suggest going a little bit deeper into something which is more specific to you, okay? Or so, like some question that has a gap, as we spoke about earlier in this course. So that's why I have these lists of subtopics here where I will explain like different examples of taking a topic and narrowing it down. So before we do that, we're going to hop on over to ChatGPT. We're going to have a look at some maybe common essay topics. And I'm going to talk about like how these could be useful for beginners, but how you could kind of like explore them in a deeper way. All right. So let's try that out right now. We're going to go over to ChatGPT. We have it right here. I'm going to type in, make a list of 10 common argumentative essay topics. Now, ChatGPT, because it's an amalgamation of like everything that's been submitted openly on the internet, it should kind of put together a lot of these common cliche topics. So let's check it out. Should the use of plastic be banned? Absolutely. I could tell you anecdotally, as a college professor, I see these ones all the time. Yeah, climate change, GMOs, exactly. Very, very common. Should college education be free? Very good. Yep. Is social media, lots of students choose to like pursue social media. Absolutely. Homeschooling, great. So these are great questions. When I say they're freebie questions, that doesn't mean they're easy. It just means they're very, very common, right? So I would like for you to like go like just a little bit deeper. Okay? So instead of like should the use of plastic be banned, maybe should the use of plastic be banned in bars? Should the plastic be banned in cafeterias at schools, right? Like try to take these questions and like contextualize them a little bit. That way, the only reason why this is useful is because it might get you to like get more out of this process so that you have the knowledge that will at least apply to your daily life or your academic or professional life, right? Is homeschooling more effective than traditional schooling? That one is pretty like closed right there. So we would just add maybe a why or a how to the end of this one right here. But again, we're going to talk about how to revise research questions a little bit more in our next module, our next lecture on choosing your research question. Anyway, this is a good topic. Should the legal voting age be lowered or raised? Maybe you could focus on a specific country and explain why. Is social media harmful to society? Maybe you could focus on a specific social media platform instead of just saying social media in general. You see what I mean? That way you could like look at the pros and or the cons of that specific platform instead of just having it so general and open about social media. Again, I spoke about this earlier. It's just to avoid redundancy and boring your audience and boring yourself. But as I said, with that being said, this is a beginner level course, so do not feel bad at all if you just want to kind of focus on like some of these common questions. That's fine as well. You know, we're just dipping our toe in. Okay? So now let's go back to our slideshow presentation and let's look at some potential subtopics for more general topics. So for education, instead of just like looking at education, you could look at the impact of technology on education, standardized testing, early childhood education, homeschooling, arts education. The economy, we could look at something more like budgeting, tuition fees, the gig economy, small businesses, globalization, right? And I'm talking about one of those things, not all of those things, right? Remember, you only have a 500-word essay, so you don't have that much room to deal with. The environment. Okay, the environment, that's great. How do we protect the environment? Blah, blah, blah. Excellent. How about we go a little bit deeper into subtopics such as pollution, agriculture, deforestation, ocean conservation, the role of technology in conservation, health, emotional health, physical health, mental health. Like, choose one of these. Global health inequalities, the obesity epidemic, vaccination, society. We could look at cultural diversity. So instead of like, how is society changing, you could look at like, how is cultural diversity changing, or how is it affecting its society? The impact of art, consumerism, migration, social justice, criminal justice. So whatever your like domain is, like if you're focusing on nursing, on business, on philosophy, on psychology, whatever your domain of study or work is, you're going to find an area within that to like focus on, right? Try to choose a specific subtopic, okay? And spend a little bit of time brainstorming, and feel free to look for ideas on the internet. Hello, welcome to lecture number 10. And in this lecture, we're going to actually choose a research question. Choosing a research question, the first thing you should do is to indicate your academic or professional discipline if you have one. If you're not sure yet, like if you're going into first year, a lot of you are just going to be like, you know, just getting a feel for things and not knowing exactly which major you want to like focus on, or which program you're going, like what your future career is going to be. So if you want it to be a bit more open-ended, just choose something you're interested in, okay? Narrow down your topic of choice to a subtopic. And after that, start with a modal verb such as is, does, can, could, will, would, should, or a question word slash interrogative pronoun. That's just a fancy word for one of those WH words, right? So why, what, where, when, how. Okay. So you could start with like the topic of technology, then subtopic would be artificial intelligence. Then a research question would be something like, should teachers use AI? Or it could be, could teachers use AI? How would teachers use AI? How could teachers use AI? Will teachers use AI more in the future? Which AI tools do teachers use? So see, choose one of these kinds of modal verbs, or like why, what, where words. That way we at least have a grammatically correct question. Like we at least have the uh, essential elements for a question, right? If you start with health, narrow it down to sleep and its impact on health. Some questions: how could students improve their sleep habits? Why do nurses experience sleep issues? Does sleep have an effect on personal burnout? And a third example, business. Let's say that your discipline or your desired job is in business. You could start with business, move into ethical investing, and you could ask questions like, should retail investors invest ethically? What kinds of businesses are considered to be ethical? So you see, start with the topic, move to the subtopic, and then move to questions. And what you could do is like make a bit of a tree with like a topic and a few tentative subtopics and a few like tentative questions for each, and just choose which one you like the most, right? It might become a little bit clearer when we move on in the future modules to thinking about argumentation, because you're probably going to realize the question that you are more able to defend or respond to, that's probably the question that you're going to want to write about in your paper, because it's going to be a little bit easier, and or at least a little bit more doable, achievable, right? Easy isn't the name of the game, but at least to make it like, possible, right? Within your grasp. So I suggest that you just kind of like brainstorm a few questions, keep an open mind, recognize that you might have to go back to the drawing board if you can't think of enough ideas for your thesis points in the future. But for right now, just at least have a few tentative research questions. Okay, welcome to lecture number 11. Today we're going to talk about common research question errors to ensure that you have the correct research question before you begin, researching and planning your paper. Here are a few common issues which I have seen with hundreds of my college and university students. These errors are completely normal, completely common, and there's a good chance that you will commit them, but As long as you're aware of these issues and these errors, you could work on revising your question. So, number one, too broad. Sometimes we write questions which are so general that your thesis points can't really cover the full scope of your question or your topic. There are too many logical gaps. Now, it's difficult to really pinpoint exactly where too broad is versus too specific or too narrow, which we'll talk about next. But these are the two most common issues with research questions. Too broad is, first of all, you need to think about who your audience is, right? Sometimes it's better to be on the broader side of things, especially if you have more of a kind of beginner level audience, like an audience that's not very well versed in the topic that you are focusing on. So if you're focusing on social media, you might want to have more of a kind of general overview of social media instead of going very specific into the algorithms used with TikTok or something like that, right? So we need to think about our audience here. That's absolutely true. But at the same time, we need to avoid redundancy. We need to add value. We need to engage in a meaningful kind of pursuit process. So in order to do that, let's avoid the kind of obvious over research questions. And let's also make sure that we're avoiding questions that are so broad that it's unclear exactly what you're talking about. This could be something like asking a question such as, how could people be happy, right? Or how could people be healthy? And going a little bit more deep into these areas, okay? Finding different subtopics within them, as we spoke about in the previous lecture. Now, the opposite issue is too specific or too narrow. Sometimes if you're too specific, then you're not going to be able to brainstorm enough thesis points or supporting details. So you're going to make sure that your topic that you're pursuing and the research question itself, it's open enough that you could cover a decent amount of ground, okay? So when we're talking about covering ground, that might be something like a football field rather than an entire city, if that makes any sense, right? Or a lake instead of an ocean. It's all about proximity, right? So when we're talking about, not being too broad, but also not being too narrow, it's thinking about, how much could I accomplish in 500 words? This is a very short essay. Another possible issue is asking too many questions. One question is sufficient for a 500-word essay. That's it. All you need is one research question. For some reason, in the minds of a lot of students, and I used to be this student, it's assumed that the more you take on, the more potential reward you have. With research questions, that's not the case. You're almost always going to set yourself up for failure or disaster if you have too many research questions. And even with very thick, dense research papers, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words, sometimes all you need is 2 or 3 research questions to thoroughly respond to and investigate those questions. In this paper, you're going to have one question, ideally, which is responded to with a thesis statement, which has 3 points, okay? All you need is one question, unless if you have a yes or no question, which is followed by a question word. Too closed, that's number 4. A question that is too closed is a yes or no question, okay? Is immigration rising in Canada? Yes or no? I could respond to that question in one sentence, in one word. Yes. Okay, done. Everybody go home. We're finished this essay. The essay is supposed to be 500 words. It's supposed to add some meaning. It's supposed to add some insight, some value for the reader and for you. So if I just ask the question, is immigration rising? And the answer is yes. Okay. Follow it up with something so that we could kind of draw out, so we could go deeper into this and we could actually provide 3 thesis points, and each of those thesis points could have 3 supporting details, and each supporting detail could have 1 example. You see? So is immigration rising in Canada? If so, why? If so, how? So that's one situation where you could have 2 questions technically, okay? But the second question is just a little tail, it's just a follow-up. Aside from that, you should only have 1 question for a 500-word essay. Don't overcomplicate it, okay? Keep it simple, all right? This is a beginner level course right here. We're doing a beginner level argumentative essay. Let's keep it simple. That's the best way that you could secure a 90% or higher in an actual course like this. So yeah, make sure that is very concise and like tight, but don't keep it too close. Next, too subjective or just subjective in general. The tricky thing with subjectivity is that like your writing is always going to be subjective to a point. We're trying to mix subjectivity and like your opinion, your personal voice, with a bit of distance and objectivity and the academic tone. But by too subjective, a good place to start is starting with sensations, okay? Avoid words such as it sounds, smells, seems, tastes, looks, okay? So for example, a research question like, why does pizza taste good? That is going to be subjective. Instead, the better thing to do is to try to understand why some people feel these sensations, okay? So why do certain immigrants refer to the Canadian immigration process as scary, as difficult, as seeming scary, right? So instead of saying, why does pizza taste great? Why do some people think that pizza tastes great? So sensation words, try to avoid those. Also try to avoid words such as like adjectives, such as important, scary, nice. Finally, number 6, leading. This is very similar to subjective. Leading, the big thing with leading is that you are assuming that you found the answer to your research question before you actually like research it. And if you've already found the answer, what's the point of doing research? So there's a degree of redundancy in this. So this commonly incorporates superlatives. Those are words like the best, the greatest, the happiest, the most dangerous, right? Or comparatives such as better, happier, faster, right? So for example, why is Toronto the most dangerous place to live? Okay, so instead of saying like, why is it the most dangerous place to live, or why is it the most expensive place to live, you could ask questions like, what makes it expensive? All right, let's try this with Harry Potter. So let's think about too broad, too narrow, closed, too many questions, a subjective, leading. Take a moment, read these, and think about which problems do they have. Let's have a look at the answers. So why is Slytherin the best house at Hogwarts? First of all, this is leading. You're using a superlative like best house. Or even if you said, why is Slytherin a better house than Gryffindor? Could you measure good, like a degree of goodness? Probably not. You could measure people's opinions, but you can't really measure goodness on its own. So this is leading. A possible revision. You could ask the question, which positive characteristics are associated with the Slytherin house? When we say are associated with, that means we could actually look at the comments that people have given the Slytherin house, that Hermione or Ron have used to describe the Slytherin house, or Goyle or Crabbe. Another possibility, which positive qualities have been associated with prominent figures who have been sorted into the Slytherin house? So again, in this situation, we could review the actual comments people have made about the Slytherin house. And those are valid opinions. So we could actually research that. But we can't actually on our own measure how good the Slytherin house is. Number two, why does the Chamber of Secrets smell so weird? Again, this is subjective. We're referring to a sense or a sensation. So a possible revision, which unpleasant qualities are associated with the Chamber of Secrets? Which characteristics of the Chamber of Secrets do students at Hogwarts find unappealing? Why? Is the invisibility cloak useful? This is subjective. It's also closed. It's also like a yes or no question. But the useful part is subjective, right? So how does the invisibility cloak help Harry Potter? Now we could actually turn that into a thesis to respond to that. We could find 3 ways it has helped Harry Potter. How could the invisible cloak be useful for witches and wizards? See, if you actually use a modal verb such as could, would, should, then you are imagining something. So instead of having this degree of certainty where you're saying this is the case with something that you can't really measure, such as usefulness, instead of doing that, you could imagine certain possibilities, and that's completely valid. Great. Number 4, why should magic be studied at Hogwarts? This is leading. You could instead revise it by asking, do witches at Hogwarts enjoy studying magic? And in this situation, you're actually studying the responses or the testimonials of witches. How has the study of magic helped alumni at Hogwarts? That should be obtain, not abstain, employment. How could house elves like Dobby, living in the Malfoy household, improve their emotional well-being and cope with a lack of affection? This has multiple questions, way too many words. There are unnecessary words here, and it's also, we're asking multiple questions. This is also quite narrow. You're focusing specifically only on house elves. Given the amount of like discussion about house elves there is, and kind of like description of house elves' lives in Harry Potter, we probably don't even have enough information about house elves, from what I know, at least from what I've read. So that's probably too narrow. Instead, we could say, how could maltreated creatures, just in general, creatures that are maltreated in the magical world cope with lack of affection? How do maltreated creatures in the magical world cope with lack of affection? And when in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban did Dumbledore commit his most heroic act? How about Hagrid? This has multiple questions. This is too subjective. How did Dumbledore impact Harry's education at Hogwarts? This would be easier to respond to. How did Hagrid help Harry during his studies? We could actually find specific examples for that and turn those into thesis points. Your turn. Try it out. Write your research question. Try to avoid these common errors. I'll see you in the next lecture. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the finale of section number 3 in WRIT 1001H. We're going to talk about the WRIT 1000 essay. And you might be wondering, why does it say WRIT 1000 here? Well, remember, when I refer to this course right here, I'm talking about WRIT 1001, or I use that term. When I am referring to the sequel to this course, WRIT 1002, I will say WRIT 1002. When I'm talking about something that kind of pertains to both of these courses, the amalgamation of them, I would just use the term WRIT 1000. And that's what we're talking about right here. WRIT 1000. That is the big, final assignment you'll be doing, the 500-word essay, WRIT 1000 essay. So an overview of the WRIT 1000 essay. Your essay will be 500 words and 5 paragraphs in length. You will have an introduction paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion paragraph. The exact elements of the paragraphs will be explored more thoroughly in WRIT 1002 and in section number 4, the final section of this course, WRIT 1001. But here's just a snapshot of the body paragraph format. And the reason why we're looking at this first is because the body paragraph is where a lot of your argumentation is expanded on, okay? And because WRIT 1001 focuses so much more on coherence in your writing and your argumentation, and the main thing we're doing here is creating an argumentative essay outline, we want to ensure that we have the structure for your body paragraphs. So we will focus on the introduction and conclusion paragraphs in WRIT 1002. But first, we're going to focus on the body paragraph. Again, this is where your your argumentation is established. Here's your body paragraph format. Each of your 3 body paragraphs will focus on one of the thesis points. Okay. So each body paragraph will start with the topic sentence. After that, you will move on to supporting detail A. We'll talk about supporting detail A shortly. So that's one sentence introducing supporting detail A, then a supporting detail A example sentence, and then an analysis sentence. And that the analysis sentence will basically link the supporting detail A with the example that you have provided. It will explain the relevance, it will explain the applicability, it will give a little explanation on that. So the reader could see the link so that it doesn't look like there's just kind of like pieces of the puzzle that are not connected. After that, you'll do the exact same with supporting detail B. So you'll introduce supporting detail B, you will give an example sentence, you will give a little analysis, explain like how how the detail is applicable to the example and vice versa. And then you'll do the same with supporting detail C. Finally, you will have a concluding sentence, which will hopefully like ease into your next body paragraph or the conclusion, whatever the next paragraph is. It should also kind of sum up what that paragraph was about. Again, we're going to focus more on topic sentences and concluding sentences in WRIT 1002, so don't worry about those just yet. But you will, for the argumentative essay outline in this course, you will need to focus on thinking about 3 supporting details, so A, B, C, and an example for each one. Now, why this formula? I try to make sure as an educator, I explain why we have these different elements in the education of my students. Why are we using this very rigid formula? All essays have different structures. There's no right structure. I want to make that clear. This is just one option. This is an option that I have revised it a little bit, but similar option to what I have taught at the college level. Some students find academic writing very daunting, and for that reason, having just a specific, like clear-cut kind of template could help. For other students, they might feel like the box is too, like, it's making me claustrophobic. These rules are too rigid. I need more room to breathe and to like be free with my writing. That is fair as well, and I completely understand that. That is one of the drawbacks of having a specific template, right? It's the double-edged sword, so I understand that too. Hopefully you will take creative writing courses or different courses where you have more freedom with your writing. Those exist as well. This course, it has a specific essay, a specific formula we follow so that we could best prepare you for what you might need to expect for college and university level writing, all right? So we have a very specific format that I just went over with you, at least for the body paragraphs. Following any given formula could help build a few skills: your attention to detail, instruction following, assessment of coherence and argumentation. So if you need to think about 3 thesis points and then 3 supporting details for each one, that's not a quick breeze through or a quick walkthrough. You need to really dig deep into that. And that might sound like a lot of work, but again, we're going to practice this until we could automatize it. It could develop your ability to brainstorm ideas, your deductive reasoning, providing specific support. So again, not just saying like this is good, but explaining like why this is good, the different ways this is good. Providing specific support, avoiding vague statements, right? Like, using apps could help people to learn languages. Okay, instead of learn languages, maybe to develop their reading skills, right? Or to develop their writing skills. go more specific, make it clear, right? Use clear language and summarizing. Welcome to lecture number 13 and welcome to section number 4. This is the final section of this WRIT 1001 How to Write an Argumentative Essay course. So in this section, we're going to really be focusing on responding to your research question and supporting it with appropriate thesis points and appropriate supporting details. So by this point, it's expected that you have an appropriate research question, that you probably started off with a few research questions, narrowed them down, applied feedback, and now you have a concrete, specific research question that you could respond to. Let's get started with creating a thesis statement. Now remember, a thesis statement is the response to your research question. One of the differences between an argumentative essay and a research paper is that a research paper could really just be exploring the research question. It doesn't need to thoroughly respond to it necessarily. With an argumentative essay, which we are doing in this course, you should have a response to your research question. Now, your response could be debatable. I mean, maybe other people disagree with you. That's why it's an argumentative essay. It could be debated. There could be counter arguments, absolutely. But you should have a clear position. And your position should not be vague. It should not be ambiguous. I should know which side you stand on, all right? So number 1, your thesis statement needs to have a clear argument. Number 2, your thesis statement needs to respond to the research question. So if your research question is how could students learn languages with mobile apps? If your thesis statement is students could improve their reading and writing skills in college by no, you're not responding to your research question in that situation. So make it simple, okay? Make it clear. The first thing you should do is take your research question and just change it from a question form to an answer form, basically. Why do students take a gap year between high school and university? Students take a gap year between high school and university because. Just start with that right there. Now, whether you have the conjunction because or a word like by, it will depend on your research question, how you syntactically and grammatically frame your response or your thesis statement. But if you have a why question, then you would typically respond to a why question with because, right? If it's a what question, like for example, what do employers, like maybe nursing employers look for in candidates in Ontario, Canada? Your response to that would probably be nursing employers look for so you would have 3 different points in candidates in Ontario, Canada, right? So the structure of your thesis statement will be a little bit different depending on what question you're asking, what question word you have, all right? We'll go into examples in just a moment. Creating a thesis statement, part 1. So these are some other examples here. How do psychology students, that should be students, respond to written feedback? Your thesis statement should be psychology students respond to written feedback by. So in this situation, since we're asking the question with how, we should be using the preposition by, okay? And after that, we would have not 1, not 2, not 4, not 5, but 3 points. We would have three ways that psychology students respond to written feedback, okay? Is Netflix effective for language learning? If so, why? Okay, Netflix is effective for language learning because, and then we would have 3 ways. Research question, what challenges do people face while using dating sites? The challenges that people face while using dating sites include A, B, and C. You should have 3 thesis points. So after this, you need to, actually complete your thesis statement. And your thesis statement for a WRIT 1001 essay requires 3 thesis points, not 2, not 4, not 5. Don't get fancy. Don't go off script. As I said, this essay is beginner friendly, and we do have the training wheels on. And I know for some of you that might be a little bit like aggravating, and it might be a little bit irritating. But let's just keep it simple. Let's follow the blueprint, okay? If anything, as I said before, this could just show your ability to follow instructions. And I know we don't want to go into university or college thinking the whole goal is to just be brainwashed and blindly follow instructions or follow orders, right? There will be opportunities for you to kind of spread your wings and be free as students. And there are opportunities for you to do that in this course as well. But as far as the structure goes, let's just follow the structure. 3 thesis points, and I'll talk about why this is useful. Why the magic number 3? 3 points will allow you to structure your paper according to the 5-paragraph essay structure. So your first paragraph will be an introduction. Your last one will be a conclusion. That means the 3 in between are your body paragraphs. Each paragraph focuses on one of the thesis points, all right? With the amount of words you have, 500 words, mathematically speaking, this will allow you to go into incredible depth with your 3 supporting details for each thesis point, okay? If you have 5 thesis points, that means you're going to have 7 paragraphs. And that's going to mean you're not going to go into as much depth into each thesis point. If you have 2 thesis points, then that means you'll only have 4 paragraphs, which again, first of all, it's not what we're trying to write. You wouldn't be following the instructions for this course, for this assignment at least, but also you would be going into so much depth into those 2 thesis points that you're not kind of showing your ability to kind of dissect this thesis or this argument into so many pieces. So 3 is an appropriate number. If you want to try 4 or 5 in the future, go for it. Absolutely. If you want to try 2 in the future, go for it. But let's just make it clear as day. 3 is the magic number right here in this course. And a lot of theses that you will see, thesis statements, I should say, will have 3 points. 3 points will allow you to sufficiently respond to your research question with considerable depth, but not too much. 3 points will allow you to prove your ability to select clear, specific, and distinct points or supporting details. 3 points will allow you to provide extensive support for a 500-word essay, which is your final assignment. Here are a few examples of WRIT 1001 thesis statements with 3 clear, specific, and distinct thesis points. For example, the proliferation of social media has had a profound impact on modern society. That is the argument, okay? It's had a profound impact. Influencing, and now these are the 3 things it's influenced: cultural norms, political discourse, individual self-perception. So that means body paragraph 1 will focus on cultural norms. Body paragraph 2 focuses on political discourse. Body paragraph 3, individual self-perception. Number 2, the rise of artificial intelligence raises ethical concerns related to privacy, job displacement, and the potential for biased decision-making in critical sectors. All right, so these are specific, they are clear, and they're distinct. What we mean by distinct is that there's not like overlap. They are completely different. They are in their own separate section. So Privacy, of course, it could be connected to job displacement. We could connect anything somehow, but we could, they're different enough that we could think of many different supporting details and examples for each without being kind of, enticed to dip our foot into the other's pond, right? So that is the way to understand that you have distinct points. Your points each could have their own examples. Like they could have a group of examples and details which fall under their own umbrella. And it's not going to be a big struggle for you to try to, for them to not go into another thesis point umbrella. Okay. If that doesn't make sense, we'll look at a few examples after. Okay. Number 3, mental health awareness is a pressing societal issue that requires attention through destigmatization, improved access to mental health care, and comprehensive mental health education. So see, again, we need to destigmatize. So that's one thing. We need to change our attitudes. Okay. We need more access. That's different from changing our attitudes. You could say that it could be related, but it's different enough that each of them could have a whole world of examples and explanations within them which do not cross over. And mental health education. Again, when we're talking about mental health education, we could talk about tons of things. We could talk about wellness techniques. We could talk about education for counselors. We could talk about education for teachers so that they're well versed in mental health. We're not going to struggle to brainstorm points for this thesis point, which are going to be like completely related to other thesis points. We could have 3 separate umbrellas, one for thesis point A, thesis point B, thesis point C. All right. So when you're trying to think about what distinct means, it's really like, think about how much effort is going to take you to try to keep the supporting details into one bucket, okay? And not like kind of seeping into another's bucket. Number 4, the exploration and colonization of Mars represents a pivotal step in human evolution with potential benefits for scientific discovery, resource expansion, and the long-term survival of the human species. All right, so again, each of those 3 could have extensive kind of explanation and discussion on them. Welcome to lecture number 14. In this lecture, we're going to talk about common thesis statement errors. Let's begin. The first error you may have with your thesis statement is a lack of clarity. A strong thesis statement will take a firm position in response to a research question. The language used in a thesis statement should make your argument clear to the reader. Your thesis statement should not be ambiguous or vague. Typically, less is more. Try not to dress up your thesis statement with fancy language. Make it concise, straight to the point. Yet, this is a big thing. Your thesis statement is like your main objective, your main blueprint. It is gold. It is everything that's going to kind of structure your paper, all right? The more words you have, the more fancy language you dress this up with, if you try to be poetic, if you try to be, like throw some too much spice on it, you might get yourself into trouble, because really everything that you put in your thesis statement, you're going to have to defend throughout your paper. And you only have 500 words. So if your thesis points are sentences within themselves, that might be a little bit too much. Keep it clear, keep it concise, okay? A lack of specificity. Your thesis statement is like a map for a road trip or a blueprint for a custom home. It is the plan for your paper. After learning about your opinion, your reader wants to know how you are planning to defend these claims. Choose your words carefully, avoid vague terms such as things or stuff. Ensure you're using academic language and correct collocations. We'll talk more about collocations in WRIT 1002 when we talk about writing accurately, when we talk about writing consistently, okay? Yeah. Also, for your terms, when there's a situation that you could use one word which is easily comprehensible to the general public, versus another word which is very not used as often, very rarely used, and a little bit tricky to understand. And I know that's subjective, right? But let's just say a word that's way less used. It's better to go with the word that's used more often, okay? So when you have a situation where you have synonyms, words with the same meanings, but you could choose a word that's more commonly used, you go with that word. Also, if you have a situation where you could use like a word that has a literal meaning versus a phrase such as an idiom, again, we'll talk about that more in WRIT 1002. A phrase such as my cup of tea or something like that, it's better to just go with the word with a concrete meaning, okay? So instead of saying, let's say, taking a gap year is not everybody's cup of tea because A, B, C. Instead of that, maybe just use, some people do not enjoy taking a gap year because, like, use more concrete terms, because when you get into idioms, proverbs, kind of metaphorical language, it could get a bit dicey there. Finally, a lack of distinctiveness. And we spoke about this before. Don't get me wrong, everybody. Distinctiveness could be like, this exists on a spectrum and it's a little bit subjective because everything could be connected in one way or another, right? So what I said in the previous lecture is that in order to ensure that your points are distinct enough, you need to make sure that you could brainstorm 3 supporting details for each thesis point. And those supporting details don't like completely overlap with the supporting details of the other thesis points. And each of those supporting details has an example, and those examples don't completely overlap with the examples of the other thesis points supporting details. So these are 2 big trees, big umbrellas that you need to keep separate. Why do we keep these separate? Why do we go through so much work? Well, the reason why is because if you don't, you're going to be just repeating. And it is going to be redundant. What's the point of doing all the work of planning out an essay if we're just going to be repeating the same kind of arguments and the same examples throughout? This will help you to like really be specific, and that could help your communication too. So when your points overlap, your argument fades away. The word overlap in this context may seem positive. My points overlap. You may think that the points are connected, relevant, and on topic. True, points that overlap are on topic. So they're all related to the general topic of your paper. However, too much overlap could open the door to repetition and redundancy. And this leads to a waste of writing. It leads to a waste of reading. No one's happy. It leads to a waste of time, okay? And you're going to bore yourselves and bore your writers along the way. This is going to turn into more of like a stream of consciousness journal, or like diary or book report, rather than an argumentative essay, which like takes an argument and dissects it into pieces and then dissects those pieces into pieces. Your thesis points should be distinct in that one point should not be encompassed or like engulfed by another one. Here are a few examples. So let's imagine your research question is, what do students like to do on their holidays? Students like to go traveling. They like to relax, let's say they like to go traveling. They like to read, and they like to take a plane. Okay, well, traveling kind of encompasses taking a plane. Like, taking a plane is a type of traveling. So, if one of your thesis points is like a type or falls under the umbrella of the other, then you're going to be just like kind of playing hot potato between the supporting details of each other, right? You're going to be when you actually section out your body paragraphs for each of these thesis points, you're going to be using the same supporting details and then the same examples, and it's going to become redundant. It's going to become like repetitive. 500 words, you're going to be saying the same thing. That's why we need to make them separate. So instead of they enjoy traveling, reading, and taking a plane, maybe they enjoy traveling. That's good. Taking a plane could be a supporting detail under that, but traveling covers taking a plane. So that's good. They enjoy traveling, they enjoy reading, and they enjoy maybe exercising. Great. Now, those three things are separate enough where we could find other supporting details within each of them. Here's another example: education, studying at university. Okay, again, let's say, for example, your research question is, why do immigrants come to Canada? Immigrants come to Canada to find employment, find education, and study at university. Study at university falls under education. So we don't need study at university. That could be a supporting detail, you see, under the umbrella of education. So immigrants come to Canada to find a job, for education, and for travel, maybe. There we go. Those are three distinct thesis points now. Here's a final one. Number 3, leisure time, hobbies, right? So maybe we could say, how do professionals like secure or maintain a work-life balance? That could be something like they do this by having sufficient leisure time, by doing their hobbies, and by practicing mindfulness, right? Well, hobbies kind of falls under leisure time. That's something you do in your leisure time, right? So instead of this, maybe we could say they have sufficient leisure time. Maybe they plan their schedule well, right? And they practice mindfulness routines. Okay. And even with that, mindfulness could fall under leisure time, right? So sometimes it's not about like whether something completely encompasses another thing or doesn't at all. It's on a spectrum. It's about how much you could keep them separate. And also keep in mind, sometimes it's going to seem like your thesis points completely engulf one another, but you might be taking an angle or an approach to your thesis points, which actually make them very distinct. So I'm not going to be able to know just from reading your thesis statement whether like they are distinct or not distinct. Okay. It's more so about like when we actually dive into your body paragraph for each thesis point. Am I reading the same examples over and over? Am I reading the same supporting details over and over? Or are they separate and have separate angles? My suggestion is just try to keep your points from the get-go as distinct as possible to avoid any potential of like overlap. In a nutshell, long story short, your argumentative essay requires the following: 3 thesis points. They should be clear, specific, and distinct from one another. Each of those thesis points should have 3 supporting details, okay? Each one should be clear, specific, and distinct from all other supporting details in the essay. So you're going to have 3 thesis points and 9 supporting details, and all of those should be specific and distinct. It ain't easy. And then for each of those supporting details, you'll have one example. All right. I know it seems hard now, it seems tricky, but believe me, we'll automatize this process. You only have 500 words in your WRIT 1001 essay. Make each word count and make each sentence count. That's what all of this is about. It's avoiding repetition, avoiding redundancy, getting the most, covering the most ground, and going as deep as possible into each of those points. Welcome to lecture number 15, where we will talk about your body paragraph structure. Your body paragraph, this is where the majority of your words will be found in your final essay. The WRIT 1000 body paragraph format, and again, WRIT 1000 refers to the totality of WRIT 1001, which is this course, which is half of a course. That's what the H is for. And WRIT 1002, which is the sequel to this course. So the WRIT 1000 body paragraph format, you will have a topic sentence. After that, supporting detail A example, supporting detail A analysis, supporting detail B sentence, supporting detail B example, analysis, and then the same for supporting detail C, and a concluding sentence. The essay outline that you're writing in this course for your main assignment, you will have a thesis statement with 3 clear, specific, and distinct points. Each of those 3 points will have 3 supporting details, and you will also have 1 example for each supporting detail. You will be writing this in point form. You will not go into extensive detail, and you won't even have to write the full entire sentences, all right? We will give you a few examples later on in this course. That's why it's an outline. The whole point is to plan your work, okay? For WRIT 1002, your main assignment will be the actual essay. You will have all of the elements above, plus you will have topic and concluding sentences and analysis sentences. You will also have your introduction and your conclusion too. Welcome to lecture number 16, where we will talk about supporting details. So by this point, it's expected that you have your thesis statement with 3 clear, specific, distinct points. Now we need to go into further depth, providing depth with support. Exploring, explaining, analyzing, and justifying your opinions with great depth is a crucial academic skill. Again, some of you are going to think, when am I going to need an essay in my daily life or in my professional life or academic life? Well, maybe you won't, okay? But this is an exercise which could help you to cultivate different skills, which will be applicable to other situations, ideally. It's difficult to do this while staying on topic, avoiding redundancy, and maintaining clarity for your audience. So the best thing to do is to have thesis points and supporting details, which are all distinct. And that way you are addressing as many specific things as possible instead of one big blurb or one big blob, one big bowl of soup of your topic, right? Remember, as your reader proceeds through your essay, you are like a tour guide who is guiding them through your thoughts, okay? Do this carefully. There should be 3 supporting details for each thesis point. Think of your essay as like a piece of pie with 9 pieces instead of, as I said, like a bowl of soup, okay? Each of the pieces will be 1 supporting detail, okay? And each every 3 pieces will be encompassed by a thesis point, all right? Supporting details will give you the chance to make your thesis point crystal clear to the reader, because you will take one thesis point and be like, okay, here are 3 specific details, specific ways of looking at my thesis point. That way there's no ambiguity. Your reader knows exactly what you're on about. Yep, it gives you, your reader, a chance to make sure the thesis point is crystal clear. Supporting details could view the thesis point from 3 different angles, or they could dissect your thesis into 3 distinct types or varieties. Supporting details. So let's imagine this is your thesis point. This is your thesis statement. So the pervasive use of social media negatively impacts mental health through fostering unrealistic expectations. That's thesis point number one. Promoting cyberbullying, number two, and contributing to a constant sense of comparison, number three. Okay, so we have three. That's body paragraph one, body paragraph two, body paragraph three. We see that body paragraph two is bolded. So that's the one we're going to find supporting details for in this example slide, okay? So for promoting cyberbullying, one supporting detail could be like cyberbullying could occur via threats made on social media. So that's one medium of cyberbullying, one method, one type of cyberbullying. Cyberbullying could happen by collectively ignoring or excluding individuals. So that's a different type because the first one is about threats. The second one is about negligence. You see, so these are two separate. We are dissecting them and making them distinct. Finally, cyberbullying could happen when individuals leave comments which criticize other people. So this one, you could say it's very similar to threats, but criticize could be very different than just threatening as well. So again, the degree of what is different could be a little bit subjective and it could be a little bit wishy-washy. I totally get that. But you could see that we have three supporting details for this thesis point. The final thing we're going to need is an example for each supporting detail, and then we're done. I promise, then we're done planning the argumentation. I know it seems like we're going very deep, but that's what this is all about, right? So that's an example. We have three supporting details. We could think of one example for each one, which is pertinent, which is specific to that supporting detail. And then we can move on to our next body paragraph. Here's another example. Thesis statement. Strengthening online privacy laws is essential to protect individuals from data breaches, safeguard personal autonomy, and maintain trust in the digital era. Okay, strengthening online privacy laws is essential to maintain trust. Let's focus on the third one, the third thesis point, maintaining trust. All right. Now we need to dissect maintaining trust into three different sections, three different pieces of the pie. So, number one, strengthening online privacy laws can promote individuals' trust in businesses. That's one angle. Focus on the individual. It could also promote individuals' trust in other individuals. So not just in businesses, but in other individuals. Those are separate, right? Those are distinct. They are different avenues, which kind of branch off the same street, if you will. Strengthening online privacy laws can promote individuals' trust in the digital tools they use. So one focuses on businesses, one focuses on individuals, one focuses on digital tools. We have things, businesses, individuals. So those, we could definitely see the distinction between them, okay? And again, if any of you don't follow me with these examples, definitely send me a message and let me know. I'd be happy to clarify this for you as well. But remember, in this course, there will be many examples afforded to you. Okay. So again, we could look at things from a different kind of aspect or a different type. So let's say your thesis point focuses on health. One type of health is mental health. Another type of health is physical health, right? It could be values. One way of looking at values could be personal values. Another one could be something like communal values. So think about your thesis, look at your thesis point and make a little kind of like a chart of, or a list of different kind of angles it could have, or different ways that it could be dissected, different levels of looking at your thesis point. Welcome, students, to lecture number 17. And we are really getting to the end of this course where you will be able to pretty much copy and paste, transfer over your thesis points, supporting details, and after this, your examples into your argumentative essay outline. Submit that and you're good to go. Providing support. Your thesis statement will have 3 thesis points. They will each be distinct, specific, and clear. Under each thesis point, there will be 3 supporting details. And under each supporting detail, there will be an example. And all of those examples must be distinct and specific, different from each and every other example in the paper. Here's an example. This is the thesis statement right here. So remote work offers, number 1, flexibility, number 2, increased productivity, and number 3, better work-life balance. Great. Now we are going to focus over here in the pink or orange, or however you see this color, salmon. We're going to focus on this as the first thesis point. So this is based on flexibility. Flexibility could pertain to something like meetings, right? Scheduling meetings, right? Zoom meetings could be had on demand, right? So you don't have to like wait for somebody to actually travel to where you are. You could basically send somebody a message and say, hey, Ryan, are you, I have a couple questions about this. Are you ready to meet up right now quickly? And you could get to work and have a meeting right then and there. That's flexibility there. Flexibility could also be based on taking breaks, right? In remote work, you could most of the time take breaks right on the spot. Hey, everybody, let's take a quick 5 minutes, or let's take a quick 20 minutes for lunch, right? It's a bit more flexible most of the time than in person, because a lot of the time with in-person jobs, you need to like pack up all your stuff. You need to go take the elevator. You need to go to your car. You go to the staff room. You have to wait in line to order some food. Of course, some of these time constraints could happen as well with remote work. There's no question. But the argument is definitely there that this could foster some more flexibility. And remember, this is an argumentative essay. So any of these points could be countered. They could be contested. Like, it's not objectively 100% true. But it's an argument, it's an opinion, right? So an example of breaks can be taken almost instantaneously, right? Again, this way we are making it even clearer to our audience of our paper, to the reader, what we mean, right? If you just say, okay, like remote work offers flexibility. So you have your body paragraph. You start with the topic sentence and you say, first of all, it offers flexibility through meetings. Second of all, it offers flexibility through breaks. And then you just finish the paragraph right there. Your readers may ask, what do they mean by meetings? What do they mean by breaks? I don't understand exactly what you mean, Ryan. So that's why we have examples which kind of like further provide explanation on meetings, on breaks. Moving on to the second thesis point, increased productivity. For productivity, we could look at the creation of resources, and we could look at commuting, okay? How does that make people more productive, or the workforce more productive? That seems a little bit ambiguous, a little bit vague. So let's go deeper. Let's give an example. So by resources, we mean it gives them on-the-spot access to different resources. So for example, if I'm like meeting with people in person, and we need to look at, some sort of collaborative document, or maybe something on Dropbox or something in Google Drive. Maybe I'll need to take out my laptop or something, open it up, go to the Canva page or something like that. Whereas if I'm working online, if I'm working remotely anyway, typically it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, just a couple clicks of a button, and I have docs right in front of me. The access and the ease of access could be, again, this is could, all of these points have counter arguments, but there's an argument there that this could give you better access to resources. Oh, now I know what you're saying, Ryan. You're talking about access to resources. Thank you for providing the example, right? That's what the reader would think. Commute, again, that seems a bit like ambiguous. I see how that's related to, the kind of related to productivity, but not quite. Well, what I am talking about here is that by not having to commute to work, by not having a commute, you might be able to sleep a little bit longer. You might be able to have a longer breakfast. You might be able to take care of yourself more. You may not have to stress as much fighting traffic. And by not having to commute, you may be less fatigued. By being less fatigued, you may be more productive. Okay? Again, it's not fully like it's not foolproof, but that's an argument, right? So see, we need to serve our argument to our reader. We need to make it crystal clear. We need to like dot every I, cross every T, right? Cover your bases. Make sure that that there's no ambiguity. There's as little room as possible for confusion. That you really hammer home exactly what you're talking about, exactly what you mean, and give them clear examples so that it's like crystal clear for them. And finally, to maintain a better work-life balance. So one of those could be family, another one could be comfort. But what do we mean by that? So with family, we could say childcare, for example. Like if you're working from home, maybe you won't have to pay thousands of dollars on childcare, and you won't have to like actually travel to the daycare center. Now I know lots of people still that's not the solution because lots of people do still need to find like childcare or like daycare for their children because just because you're working at home, you're still working, so you still need to concentrate. So I understand lots of complexities right there. As a father myself, I totally get it, but this is an argument. And comfort, the environment can typically be modified. Now, some people, just because they're working remotely, some people can't afford a laptop. So for certain people, it may be a little bit like they may have to go to the library to remote work, right? So I totally get that. For some people, they're, they could only modify their environment so much. They might have a room full of like their family members or like lots of family members living around them, which causes a lot of noise and a lot of kind of distraction, right? So that exists too. But again, this falls under the umbrella of work-life balance, right? Having more comfort, right? So this is an example of having, our like our three thesis points are supporting details for each. Now, what you will notice is that there's only 2 supporting details for each. I'm going to ask you to brainstorm 3 supporting details for each, and each supporting detail will have an example. So yours will even be bigger than what you see right here. But I would suggest just start with 2 and then try to take it a step further and get to that number 3. And if you could think of 3 specific, distinct, and clear supporting details, that would be fantastic. By the way, even after you have your example, it still might not be clear how your example is related to your supporting detail or how your supporting detail is related to your thesis point. So that's what your analysis sentences will be about. We're going to talk about that and touch on it later in WRIT 1002. Hello everybody, and welcome to the 18th and final lecture in this course, WRIT 1001. We're going to talk about the argumentative essay outline, which is your main assignment for this course, and then we're going to wrap up. So submit your argumentative essay outline. Make sure that you have a clear research question. Also, ensure that you have a clear thesis statement which responds to your research question and has 3 clear, specific, and distinct points. For each of those clear, specific, and distinct points, you should have 3 supporting details. And for each supporting detail, you should have 1 example. That's a total of 3 thesis points, 9 supporting details, and 9 examples. We've worked on this piece by piece and proceeded through this course step by step. So hopefully you have most of this in front of you right now. And guess what? You're not going to have to do too much editing because This course, the WRIT 1001 course, it was all about planning at the end of the day. Don't overthink it, everybody. This is just a planning stage and there's no pressure. Don't be afraid to slightly alter your research question if that's necessary. Look at the exemplars provided on this course. Include all essential elements outlined in the instruction. So literally just like check mark, I have 9 examples, I have 9 supporting details. They are all different from each other, blah, blah, blah. And use the template provided to complete your outline, all right? And this will help you to prepare for WRIT 1002. And thank you so much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure to be your teacher. I will see all of you in WRIT 1002, where we will focus on making your writing go from good to better and to really ensure that you could turn that 60 into an 80 or a 70 into 90 so that you could put your best foot forward when you enter college or university, or if you're in college or university, when you enter the course that you will need these skills. Thank you so much. Goodbye.